all morning. Scholar S.Moreno is a psychology major and is graduating in spring 24, and she is going to tell us about imposterism and family achievement guilt in college students.
All right, thank you, Dr. Myers, for that introduction. Hello, everyone. My name is S.Moreno. I'm a senior psychology major here at St. Edward's University, and today I'd like to present my research on imposterism and family achievement guilt in college students. First off, I would like to start by defining what imposterism is. So imposterism, or more commonly known as imposter phenomenon or imposter syndrome, is a phenomenon that's identified by distinct feelings of inadequacy and insecurity, specifically in association with a student being in higher education. It's a feeling as though no matter what success or achievements you receive, you feel as though these are a result of pure luck rather than a product of your hard work. And current research shows that imposterism is an incredible psychological barrier for specifically minority populations in higher education, such as women, students of color, and especially first-generation students, which are students whose parents did not receive a degree from a four-year institution. Specifically seen in research done by Jury and colleagues, we see that there are psychological barriers such as imposterism, and this increases the likelihood of first-gen students to leave college before they can finish their degree, and they experience this at higher rates than continuing generation students, which are students who have at least one parent who earned a bachelor's degree or more. In fact, we have begun to see that students who feel a sense of shame and guilt towards their role as a student are more prone to experiencing higher levels of imposterism and anxiety, which is what brings me to my second variable, family achievement guilt. Through various data collection, and researchers were able to identify that there are 4 components that make up this type of guilt that a student feels. And those 4 being, number 1, leaving family behind. So students who experience family achievement guilt tend to feel bad that they're leaving their family behind to attend college. Number 2, we have having more privileges. So students with this guilt, they feel as though they have more privileges than their family members when attending college and having these experiences. Number 3, we have becoming different. So students start to feel guilty that they think that their family members think that they are changing because of college. And lastly, we have experiencing pressures. So just general pressures that a student can experience navigating these new environments alone. And through this research, we start to see that there are similarities between family achievement guilt and imposterism as they are both students attempting to minimize success. But however, what sets family guilt apart is a person feeling discomfort in receiving more educational opportunities than family members. So because of these differences, but also prevalences in feelings in students, I wanted my research to focus on the following questions. I'm very passionate about this topic, so I had a lot of questions. One of my primary questions was, do first-gen students experience family achievement guilt and imposterism more than continuing gen students? I also wanted to see if moving away versus staying home had anything to do with whether students experienced imposterism and family guilt more than students who didn't. I wanted to see if family achievement guilt and imposterism were correlated, and if they were also correlated with sense of belonging and well-being. So in this study, I'll get into it further in the PowerPoint, but I also wanted to see if a student's sense of belonging was skewed or their well-being in terms of these variables. And lastly, I wanted to just see if these findings were more nuanced or clear when examining the components of family achievement guilt. So looking at those 4 subscales rather than guilt as a whole. And then my corresponding hypotheses, I made the assumption that imposterism and family achievement guilt would be higher in first-gen students. I also thought that it would be higher in students who moved away to attend college rather than students who stayed in their hometown. I thought that imposterism and family achievement guilt would be positively correlated, and that they would then be negatively correlated with sense of belonging and well-being. And for that last question, last research question, I really just wanted to see if there was any significance in the subscales. So moving into my method, I went ahead and used 4 different scales to measure my variables, and I put all of these questions into an online survey in Qualtrics. And the scales I used were in Clance Imposter Syndrome Scale, I used Family Achievement Guilt Scale, and in order to identify a person's sense of belonging in their institution, I used the psychological sense of school membership. And then to measure well-being, I used the revised mental health inventory. So these are just some of the questions that the participants were looking at, and they're more of statements, and participants would respond on a scale of 1 to 5, how much they experience these feelings. So 1 being not at all, to 5 being all the time. So the first one from imposterism, we have, I'm afraid people will report it to me, might find out that I'm not as capable as they think I am. We have questions from the Family Achievement Guilt Scale where it's, I feel bad for leaving home to pursue my interest in college, and I feel bad because going to college means many sacrifices from my family. Then we have, for sense of belonging, we have, I feel like a real part of this university, and that's just to kind of identify how the students felt in terms of their own institution. And then, how much time during the past month have you felt calm or peaceful? So that's to determine well-being. Overall, we had 47 current college students respond to our survey, and the ages ranged between 18 and 41, so we got a good number in there, and they were primarily seniors and juniors in college. Likewise, this is what the gender distribution demographics look like. So we have the majority women with some men and some non-binary folk. Then for ethnicity, we have the majority of respondents being Latinx, and then white. So we have more Latinx students than others. And then for first generation status, we almost have an even split between continuing gen students and first generation students. And first gen students, this can be whether, this can vary between like parents' education. So some have parents who just completed high school to parents who went to a 4-year institution but did not complete their degree. And then my results. So I ran a lot of correlations because that was the purpose of my research. I wanted to see if there were any correlations between each of the variables. As you can see, we have the 4 variables there alongside the 4 subscales of family achievement guilt. And we can already see that any text in green or with asterisks just indicates that there was a lot of significance between those variables. And we can see that some positively correlated variables are family achievement guilt and imposterism. And what that means is that whatever level a person scored on imposterism, they also scored that almost equal level in family achievement guilt. So we do see that imposterism and family achievement guilt are positively correlated. And that is with all 4 subscales. We also see that that belonging and imposterism are negatively correlated, which means that when one variable is high, the other one kind of goes down in contrast. So the higher a person scores on imposterism, the less they score on a sense of belonging. And then we have a negative correlation between well-being and imposterism. So again, high imposterism leads to a lower well-being. We also have well-being and family achievement guilt, but specifically in those subcategories of leaving family behind and experiencing pressures. So students who experience family achievement guilt, but specifically felt more guilty about leaving family behind and experiencing pressures, they had a lower sense of well-being. I also ran independent t-tests to kind of see if there were any differences between first-gen students and continuing gen students in terms of all of these variables. And we do see some significance, which proves one of my hypotheses that first-gen students experience family achievement guilt more than continuing generation students. And there's a nice graph for that. But, and then specifically in the subcategory of having more privileges. So first-generation students expressed that they feel as though they have more privileges than their family members than continuing generation students do. Likewise, I also ran a t-test for, depending on whether they moved for college or stayed in their hometown, whether that had any significance. And while this t-test did not technically reach the statistical threshold for significance, we do see that it's trending in that direction, that students who moved for college experience imposterism at higher rates than students who stayed in their hometown for college. We also see that specifically family achievement guilt and leaving family behind, students felt this more when they moved away for college rather than when they stayed. Now time for discussion. What does all of these graphs mean? So we see that imposterism relates strongly to family achievement guilt and a lower sense of belonging and lower well-being, which is similar to what we've seen in research, but it's interesting now that we have that family achievement guilt variable added in. We also see that the subscales of leaving family behind and experiencing pressures in relation to family achievement guilt results in a lower sense of well-being. And as well, we have a sense of belonging relates to higher senses of well-being. So. And then, just to reiterate what we said with the graphs, that first-gen students felt more family achievement guilt, especially regarding having more privileges than continuing gen students, and that students who moved away from home felt slightly more imposterism and stronger guilt about leaving family behind than those who stayed home. So while we did have a very good sample size, it was relatively small, which could have led to the low statistical power in that second t-test that we tried to run. So in the future, I would like to see if we could get I would like to run this survey again to see if we can receive a larger sample size and see any more significance that we did not catch the first time. Another limitation was that this data was collected during the summer months, so this is during a time where students majority of them are at home, and so their responses to sense of belonging and well-being could be skewed depending on where they are and in terms of their university if they went back home, etc. Like I previously said, I would like to continue data collection for a larger sample size just to kind of open up that array of research that we can do, and if we have a larger sample size, we can be able to run regressions on the data set to determine if there were any conceptual predictors. So with my current research, we just found correlations between variables and just some significance in comparisons among demographics, but hopefully with a larger sample size, we'll be able to see a little bit more of those comparisons, if gender plays a role, if ethnicity, and then if financial support also plays a role in how much they experience these variables. Overall, I think this research just provides a really good insight into how imposterism and family achievement guilt interact in college students, as we see that these are stronger for first-gen students and students who moved away from home. This is also the first empirical connection between imposterism and family achievement guilt, which is why I did my research on this, and specifically in the college context. And really the takeaway from this is that this provides further evidence that first-gen students and Black, Indigenous, people of color struggle in higher education, and it's important for us to put in those protective factors in order for colleges to retain their student populations, which now all of these minority populations are making up the majority of colleges. So stuff such as diversity, equity, and inclusion offices, success coaches, career coaches, any sort of protective factor that we can put in place for these first-gen students and students of color would be incredible and important for higher education. So acknowledgements, I would like to thank my faculty mentor, Dr. Katie Rackley, for countless meetings and just me being like, what do I do? So thank you to Dr. Rackley for that. I would like to thank the McNair Scholars Program for really allowing me this opportunity to do this research. I'd like to thank the McNair professional staff, Dr. Minus, Dora Bettis, Amalia Merino, but I would like to thank them for really hearing me out on my research, giving me ideas, and just helping me in general. I'd like to thank my McNair cohort for being such amazing and supportive individuals. They've been over here like being like this, and I love them. And lastly, I'd like to thank my family, the people I do this for, and yeah, for their unwavering, she's crying. Come on, for their unwavering support and motivation. Thank you. Yes.
Did you say that for your future research you were going to look into just like racial and ethnic inclusion? And so I guess I'm just going to ask, like, what are the other identities that you hope to look into more?
Yeah, so specifically, I know that I only ran tests with first gen and people who moved away. Obviously, we did not have enough time in our 8 weeks to do more, but I really wanted to see if there was any differences via gender, so like women, men, non-binary folk. I also wanted to see if ethnicity had anything to do with this. We didn't have like an even demographic response from a lot of different ethnicities, so I would like to see that more. And then financial support, I just want to see if students who support themselves rather than family supporting them, I want to see in the future if there's any difference in like levels of imposterism or family achievement guilt that they experience.
So currently, like with the change to like the affirmative action situation going on, how do you think that would impact like the results that you would see in the future if you continue to do this research?
So I'm going to be honest, I'm not super well versed in the affirmative action and stuff like that, but in pertaining to my research, I just really want for institutions to take this research to heart and kind of have that motivate at all if we can change things. But again, I can't so super well talk on that topic.
I didn't know what it was called. I hadn't asked for it before, like, I don't know what it's called, but it's basically like where, like, the schools right now they don't take into account whether, like, their ethnicity or the race or their background at all. And so, like, they go based just on, like, what, their report card.
They don't consider like their background.
They all, yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, yeah, that is definitely a problem because obviously someone's SAT scores, or I don't even think they're doing an SAT, those can't really determine a student's potential or like progress in college or their acceptance at all. So hopefully I'll try to somehow include that in my research or just see what people's opinions are on that and see if we can do something about it.
Yeah,
That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I want to go to religious schools.
Yes.
Do you maybe look into anything about like family support, or like anything like that when it comes to the students that are belonging, or also lessening that guilt that they have, the achievement guilt? Is there anything on that?
Yeah, that would actually be very interesting and a very good future direction that I could take with my research. As for right now, the only questions I really had on family support was just financial, and that was just a question that I included in my demographics. So that would be a nice way to continue and, you know, expand my research by including more like family support questions.
Any other questions?